Hey,
Hey,
crazy podcast listeners.
hello. Today we're going to be talking about helping parents understand what kindergarten readiness looks like. And
I
I
love
think
that.
I think that it's interesting because parents, of course, they want their child ready for kindergarten, right? I mean, no one doesn't want their child. No one goes into it saying, "Oh, I hope my kid's not ready." But we really have a challenge for early childhood folks because parents really think that what they need is one thing, and we know what they need is another thing. So we can talk about that today.
Yeah, and we don't want to paint with a broad brush and think like all teachers think this or all parents think that. We totally know that that's
Absolutely.
not the case. But we hear a lot of, well, and this is mostly from teachers and family child care providers. I know it's developmentally appropriate, but the parents are worried about them not being ready for kindergarten or not being academically prepared or all that kind of stuff. And we get it. I think everybody who has a child who they love, whether it's a grandparent, foster parent, guardian,
Hmm.
auntie, whatever you are to a child, all of us want them to be successful and able to learn and able to get along. And we all want those good things for kids. But it's important for us to kind of really tune in a little bit in terms of what's appropriately connected to a 4 or 5 year old who's preparing. I don't know why we even have to prepare kids to go to kindergarten, but
Hmm.
that's what it is. So kindergarten readiness.
But Kathy, kindergarten's the new first grade. We hear
That
that.
makes me sick to my stomach.
I
Kindergarten
know.
should not be the new first grade. And even though it might be because we have this high stakes testing in the United States, and kids have to be ready for this, and especially in Massachusetts, if you're like us in Massachusetts, we have testing in third grade, and it's really difficult because we feel that that's why we got our name, the Pushy Dames, because we want you to push back on that academic push down.
Hmm.
And kids kids in kindergarten should be joyful, and they're not anymore. Kids in kindergarten are stressed out. They have anxiety. Some kids are on meds, for anxiety when they're in kindergarten. It's so sad to me.
Hmm.
When you think back about kindergarten, it should be joyful and
Yeah.
wonderful, and I can't wait to go.
I'm on a couple of Facebook pages that I follow just to see what's going on, and it's basically a mom and dad's groups or whatever. And I can't tell you how many times people write in on the face. They post something saying, "My child is in kindergarten. They hate kindergarten. They don't want to go to
Ugh,
school. They have stomach aches. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do?" And then it's amazing because in the responses, "My child hated kindergarten too, and my child hates my. I can't get my kids to leave the house in the morning." I that me that just breaks my heart. We're setting these kids up for failure at such a young age because they don't want to go to school. Why do
yep,
we? Why? Like, who's this? I don't even know. I can't even.
I
It's
know,
just,
I know.
who's the slow learner here? Like, that's not okay. Don't you want kids to start out school enjoying it and liking it and having a good time and looking forward to going? And instead, we have the reverse. So it's pretty frightening when you think
And
about it.
it just occurred to me, we didn't plan it this way, but it's the middle of June, towards the end of June right now. School's getting out, summer is here.
Hmm.
Children should be, and 4 year olds to, kids going off to kindergarten in the fall, 4 and 5 year olds should be having a joyful time. And what they're going to hear is, "Are you going to kindergarten? Oh my goodness. And are you ready?" And that kind of stuff stresses kids out too. So
Hmm.
really be mindful about how much time you're spending talking about kindergarten, and are you adding anxiousness to the children that you love?
And
Because
pressure.
if you, yeah, and pressure, and it's certainly not intentional, but it happens a lot. So you just want to
Hmm.
remember that too.
So I will just throw this out there too. Kindergarten, the graduations, the preschool graduations for kids that move on to kindergarten. Some of my favorite programs do it, I'll be honest. And they have these little ceremonies and they have these little graduations
And the
and
kids wearing like a little cereal bowl with a piece of
no,
cardboard on the top and a blue
I
gown.
I've actually seen real like gowns and caps and everything else
Oh,
out there, and it worries me. And the reason why it worries me is it is a great big transition for kids and it's important. This is a big change. They're going to the big school, right? But I think a lot of the kids at this age are like, I'm going to kindergarten tomorrow, right? Because you're telling me I'm moving on. So it's very confusing for them because they don't
Yeah.
understand time. They don't understand summer really, that, how long it is before. So they have this unneeded pressure of when am I going to kindergarten, because they don't understand time like we do. So they're worried about it, first of all. Second of all, they're on display because they're graduating. Okay. And that just bugs me too. Have a get together, just have the families get together, sing all the songs they sing all year, and clap for the kids when they do certain things. I don't think it really needs to be that special graduation with the cap and gown and doing all those things. And I am so sorry to my programs that I love that do it. I'll say that because I do know that you do it wholeheartedly and that you care about your kids and your families, but I don't think it's needed. And I
I
really do think
actually
pressure.
got into a social media argument with somebody that I know, a
Hmm.
friend, um, because they were upset that their grandchild didn't have a preschool graduation.
Oh.
And instead, they went like to a local farm or they did something different. And
Hmm.
I said, that's wonderful. What smart teachers to end the year in a comfortable, relaxed, joyful way for these kids who spent the year being comfortable and relaxed and joyful in their classroom, right? And I said, a lot of kids get a lot of. It's like us telling any group of adults, all right, let's all get up on stage and dance and sing. Now, Leah would be the first one up there, and she would love it.
I would
I would
love
want
it.
to like throw up in my mouth that I was going to get up in front of people and dance and sing. And every single dance recital or school graduation, there's a child who's really uncomfortable. Even if it's one child, it's usually more. Even one child, that means, okay, this isn't feeling good for them. We shouldn't be doing this. We
Hmm.
shouldn't be doing this. But I had this argument with my friend, and it finally came down to it wasn't fair for the adults. That's what they said to
Mm.
me. But it's not fair for the adults. And I said, "Oh my God, go take yourself out for dinner or go to a movie or go to a show. Entertain yourself. It's not the kindergartner's job or the 4-year-old's job
and
to
and
help
this
the
comes back.
grandparents and parents be happy."
It's just like holidays. If you want to celebrate it, let your family celebrate it. Have a little graduation in your backyard, right? And say, "Oh, congratulations, little Susie. You just graduated preschool. Yay, and we're gonna have a little party here at our house." Do it. That's
Yeah,
great. You could do that if you want to. That's up to you. But if you're a developmentally appropriate program and you know what's best for kids, a graduation ceremony is not best for kids. It really isn't. And
it's true.
and I love it because people will say, "Oh no, the kids love it." Do the kids love it? Do they really? I
I was
think
at a program
they love
recently and they
playing
were
with mud.
Yeah, they were practicing for graduation at a program I was at recently, and there was one little child that I knew was going to be uncomfortable. I had only been there for like 30 minutes, and I was like, "Oh, this kid's not going to like this." And I said, "What about this little one?" And they said, "Oh yeah, we already called their mother to tell them that he wouldn't be up on the stage during graduation because it's uncomfortable for him." And I liked that they were sensitive to his needs. I thought that was wonderful, but it's like he's the one is uncomfortable. There's several others who haven't come right out and told you by their
Hmm.
behavior that they're uncomfortable. They're just kind of going along to get along, but they probably have a pit in their stomach or they're going to have diarrhea that morning. So we are
Right?
way off track. This should have
I
been
was
a
just
podcast about graduation
I was just
ceremony.
gonna say we digressed a bit,
What else
but
is new?
but you know what else happens, Kathy, too, talking about getting ready for kindergarten? You start to hear, "Oh, you're not gonna be able to do that in kindergarten. If you think you're gonna do that in kindergarten," who the hell wants to hear that? It's like saying,
Exactly.
if you think you're gonna do that on your vacation, you're crazy because you're not. You're looking forward to you should be looking forward to something, but yet you're told all the things you're not gonna be able to do that there, or if you think you're gonna get away with that, you're crazy, type of
Yep.
thing.
Yeah,
And it just adds again more pressure. So what
it's
do they
true.
actually need? What do kids need to be ready for kindergarten? It's not what the
Well,
superintendents say. It's not what the principals say. Let's just throw that
and
out there.
let's
Many.
throw that out with a little bit of a data point, without citing real research for you. But the majority of superintendents and principals do not come from an early childhood background. The majority of superintendents and principals come from K to 12, and mostly higher, like elementary, middle, and high school. So they don't understand early childhood education in the way that your early childhood teachers do. So
Mhm.
those of you who are in family child care or early childhood programs, your teachers know more about what's developmentally appropriate and what's best for 4 and 5-year-olds, not the superintendents, not the lawmakers, not the politicians, not the people who write all these standards and all this pressurized stuff. And I'll
Mhm.
tell you right now, your child doesn't have to know every single thing before they walk through the door of kindergarten. That's what kindergarten is for, to help them learn some things. And academic pressure on a younger child is not the way to go. So it's not about drilling and killing them on colors and shapes and numbers and alphabets and whether they can write their name forward and backward and they know how much their mother weighs and what their address is and all that kind of stuff. Yes, those things will come, but it doesn't mean they need to know them before they get through the door. So what do they need?
So, well, we actually had to put together a group of kindergarten and first grade teachers because there was so much worry about these kids and what are they going to know. And like you said, school systems have this list that parents get, when their kids go for their testing. We could go off on a whole tangent on that. They're testing with all these strange people, strange building that they have to go to, and then they have to like stand on their head and draw, an elephant and whatever. They have to do all these crazy things. So I don't even know. It's
They
just
have to do
ridiculous.
this. They have to
Yes.
see if they can do fingers and thumbs together. And then
Yeah.
you start seeing parents practicing with their kids. You have to know
Yeah.
how to do this at the thing. It's like, oh my gosh, I
Jump
wish
on
a
one
kid would
foot.
walk in and say, lady, what are you testing me for? I'm a great kid. Leave me alone. I'm looking
Exactly.
forward to coming here. Don't ruin it.
Exactly. So we know that kindergarten, testing, they have to go for that and all that. And then they get the list. This is what your child should know before they enter kindergarten. Well, guess what? That child may not be able to write their entire name when they have this big, huge, long name. But they may be able to write a two-wheeler and no one else can. That's what's important. Like that kid has a great skill and that's an important thing.
They
And
might be
they
able to
will
pump on the swings without anybody having to push them
push
because
them.
they've been building their physical strength and not necessarily their I can color in the lines and make and shade the apple, that kind of thing. It's
Absolutely. So
very true.
So when we got together the kindergarten and the first grade teachers, just to say, okay, early childhood folks, this is what the people that you're sending these kids off to, this is what they're going to tell you they need. They're going to tell you today. And as everyone can probably guess, what do the kids need? Dun, da, da. Go
They
ahead,
told
Kath.
us three main things, and none of them had to do with academics.
Hi,
Well,
everybody.
hello.
Long time no talk on the podcast.
I know we talk a lot, just not necessarily things that we record and share with the general public. So,
That's
what are we
right.
going to talk about today, Leanne?
Oh, well, one of the questions that keeps coming up that people keep asking us, and I think that people really are struggling with this, is how do I set up my lesson planning for a play-based curriculum? So that's the big question. Like, how do I plan if I'm going to do play-based? And I have to have a curriculum set up and I have to have my lesson plans submitted to my director or to someone. So how do I set that up? So I think that's what I think, is a good topic for today.
I'd
What
like
do you
to
think?
even I'd like to even flip it to say, how can I be play-based, which I know is best for kids, and
Mm-hmm.
still have to conform to, planning, documentation, lesson plans
Assessment,
and curriculum and assessments and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
right? Yep.
Um, yeah, I had somebody ask me that same question the other day. So isn't that funny? And it wasn't the same person that you talked to. So I guess
Mm-hmm.
it's important.
Yeah, and I think that's the big struggle because we know that if you are facilitating and you are meaning putting out great materials for kids and things that interest them, and you are assessing, so you're documenting, you're writing things down, and you're keeping track of things that way, it makes your life a lot easier to do that than to be planning, ahead in 3 months, let's do this. And, in September, you're saying in April, let's do insects. It's just like, it doesn't make sense because you don't know what the kids' interests are going to be. So in that sense, we're going to make it easier on you, I think, because you're
And
not
I think
having
that I
to
think that
plan.
would be the thing to think about is if and guilty as charged. When I first started teaching, I
Mhm.
relied on the calendar, and I relied on holidays or themes or whatever it was. So September was the apples and all that kind of stuff. If you're doing that, that's limiting you, and that is not going to be play based because it's going to be what you're thinking about doing. So free yourself from that. Goodbye, monthly or weekly kind of
Yep.
follow what the calendar does. Kids don't pay attention to that stuff. They don't need that. They're interested in the here and now. So, and I think if you talk to real play gurus and look at play research, they're going to say the adults need to kind of step out of it and let the
Hmm.
children play, like literally let the children play. So if that's the case, then what's your role, and what should you be
Yep.
spending your time on, and what's meaningful as a teacher and as a researcher and as a guide and, as a documenter and all that good stuff.
And I will also say that if someone's saying to you, I need your lesson plans for the next month or the next 3 months or whatever it is, or for the year, which is crazy when you think about it, you need to step back and think about how you're going to respond to that too. What are you going to say and how are you going to plan? Maybe you can say, these are some of the skills I'm going to try working on, and I'm going to do, provide and facilitate experiences for kids to be able to work on all these skills. But to actually know, what the topic's going to be or where it's going, it just doesn't make sense. That's not what's best for kids. So, yeah.
100% agree with you. None of us know what I love when it's like, oh, you have to make your mammogram appointment for a year from now. I'm like, what? Oh, your 6 month dental checkup. I have no idea what I'm going to be doing 6 months from now. What makes us
Right.
think that we know what kids are going to be interested in even 6 days or 6 minutes or 6 hours from now,
Hmm.
I think that's a really valid point. And maybe if we think about this in the way that we witnessed when we were in Reggio Emilia, Italy, um, I have to
I
stop and
know.
pause and think about that. But when we were in Reggio, it became apparent that teachers spend their time on different things than what we spend our time on typically in the United States of America. Do
Mhm.
you think that's fair to say?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's kind of flipped. So I think here in the United States, we spend a lot of time on the planning piece of like, okay, this is what we're doing in April, this is what we're doing in May. Whereas I think with Reggio, one of the key takeaways for me was that teachers look at what kids are interested in, they put out the materials, and then what they do is they do a lot of assessment and they write down a lot of the documentation of what kids were interested in, what they were talking about. And then the planning goes from there. That's when they say, okay, this is what the kids like, or this is something I noticed that they could use some work on, or, really like to see them do more scissor work or, glue stuff. So I'm going to put out things that they're interested in where they can use scissors and where they can use glue and all those types of things. So it's kind of flipped. Instead of doing all this planning beforehand, they're doing the planning after the day's over, after the week's over, and
Yeah.
that's how they're planning.
Makes it much
Yeah.
more authentic, and it really does make it much more individualized. So I think we know that programs call themselves kind of developmentally appropriate or individualized curriculum or creative or play based or whatever name you want to put on things. But if you really want to be play based, then the lead comes from the children. And you start your planning by observing. You start your planning by documenting. You start your planning by kind of really paying attention, listening, watching, observing. Then you sit and you say, okay, so this is what happened with the Play-Doh and feathers or whatever it is.
Hmm.
I saw the kids going to get feathers and they were sticking them in the Play-Doh and they were doing this and that. And they were talking about, I don't know, they were talking about birds and the nest that they found or something. What do I add to that? How do I bring that to another step for them? So what do I put out to invite them or provoke them, as the Reggio folks would say, a provocation for them to say, oh, look at that. So maybe there's some yarn and maybe there's some twigs and maybe there's some other things. And you also might just ask the kids,
I was
"What
just
else
gonna
do you want?"
say, what's even easier? Like, what do you want to know more about? Or what do you want to
Yeah,
work on? And just
yeah.
ask
"Is
them
there
and take it
anything
from
I can
there.
get for you to help you with what you're working on here?" That and I think for teachers, you feel like, "Well, I'm not teaching if I'm just sitting and watching and observing and writing things down. I should be talking with the kids and engaging." And yeah, to a point, but you really
Mhm.
wanna try to stay out of their play to let them be the ones who are truly leading it.
Yeah.
So what do
Kathy,
programs need to do?
I had a conversation with someone just yesterday, actually, and we were talking about it, and she was talking about how she kept using the word just, and we say all the time, just has no place in early childhood. Um,
JUST, yeah.
yeah, and it was funny because she kept saying, but if I just let them finger paint, it's just a finger painting. Like I feel like I need to turn it into something or I need to do something so people look at me like I'm a professional, I'm a teacher. And I said to her, take that just out of it's just a finger painting or it's just, a creation that they made.
Or they're just playing,
Exactly, because
right?
as a teacher, your job is to watch what they're doing, see what they're doing, ask them how can you expand on this? What do you want to do more? So ask those important questions, not the drill and kill questions. What color is this? What shape is this? Not those types of questions, but the real important questions, and then take it from there. But it is funny because I really do believe that so many early childhood educators are competing, and I say this sincerely, competing with elementary school teachers. In fact, they're saying to themselves, like, I need to make myself look more professional, or I need to look like a real school teacher. As you know, it's so much more about the caretaking and being a caregiver when we're talking about early childhood. And that's your role, so much more than having a pointer and pointing to this and what is this color, what is that shape, what is this and what is that. Kids will learn those things if you give them the opportunities, and you know, you facilitate the things that they're working on, and you add to it and you expand on it and all that good stuff. But I think that that's a challenge. And I think when we say, you know, we're a play-based curriculum, well, what are you doing all day? You're just sitting there watching them? Absolutely not. Look at what I'm writing. Look at what I'm jotting down. This is the information I got about this child today. This is, you know, other information I got about them as a group and that type of stuff. That's the important chunk and piece of it. And so much of that is missing, I think, in the United States. We're so much more worried about getting the picture for the app. We're so much more worried about, you know, making sure that mom is happy with the receipt and the piece of crap activity that you send home and those types of things. We need to
It's
focus
true.
more on the kids. Yeah.
So if we all agree with that, and if every teacher out there in hearing distance to us agrees, but their administrator or their owner or their director or their co-teacher isn't on board, or they say, well, that's
Hmm.
all well and good, but you need to fill in every square on your lesson plan for the week.
Hmm.
Um, I think we need to think about that. And one of the
I'll say really quickly, and I'm interrupting you like I always do, but I'll say really quickly, now is the time to make your change and to go wherever you want to go and go to a program that fits what your philosophy and belief is, because everyone is desperate for early childhood folks. So that's number one. I would say, you know, re-look at the program you're working at and say to yourself, do I need to move on? Because if you're working in a program that doesn't have the same philosophy as you, job's not going to be as enjoyable and, you know, as satisfying as it should be, basically. But go ahead. Sorry.
I wholeheartedly agree with you, but I will also say I know there are some of you who can't leave or won't leave, or like your mom's the owner and and
Yeah.
she needs you, or you and your husband own the place together and there's different whatever it is, whatever your dynamic is. But
Hmm.
I say that to my students that I see a lot. I'll say, you can stay and change the place. You can work hard to try to change everybody's philosophy to be yours, or you can move on. So I get that. I do get that,
Hmm.
but not everybody's able to do that.
True.
But I think what I would recommend is that you say, instead of putting a lot of emphasis on the front end of your planning, put the emphasis on the middle and the back end of your planning. So let's say you have a lesson plan form that you have to use every week or whatever it is, right? And let's say your form has 5 days on it and it's got some boxes or some categories or domains of development or areas of your classroom or whatever it is, however it's set up. Maybe at the beginning, like on Sunday night, you look at it and you say, yeah, you know what? I noticed on Friday the kids were really tuned into this and this and this. So maybe you've got a few things on there on Monday that you present or that you use as an invitation or a provocation. But the rest of the week is kind of empty. Or maybe you're going to the library one day, or that, you know, Mr. Bongo is coming in to play the drums with the kids or something. I don't know,
Mr.
whatever it is.
I
Maybe
want
it's
to
one of
meet,
those
wait,
topics.
I want to meet Mr. Bongo.
Well, of course you do, but I am not sharing Mr. Bongo with anybody. But but let's say Mr. Bongo is coming in. The things are going to happen, you plug in, and maybe you type it up like that, or maybe you write it in blue pen or whatever it is that you do. And then as the day goes on, so at the end of the day, Monday, you sit, or during the day, you reflect and you say, the kids played with this so much. We need to have that there Tuesday. Or you talk to your co-teacher. What did you notice? How did you do it? So you're adding. It's like a living document or a
Hmm.
working document. It's not this finalized thing that's like stamped and hardcore. You have to do this. And somebody comes into your classroom and it's 10:30 on Wednesday and they say, well, you're supposed to be talking about, you know, Mr.
Right.
Bongo right now. You say, oh, well, the kids were more interested in Mrs. Fluffernutter or whatever it is. So
Hmm.
you go with their interest. And then by the end of the week, you might have a pretty full form because you've written down things that the kids have chosen to do. You've written down things that happened kind of spontaneously. And then you use that to assess and document and share with families. This is what we've talked about today. And this is what the kids learned while they were doing this finger painting. And this is why it's important, and
Hmm.
so forth and so on. So
Yeah.
that's what I would suggest, that you can have documented thoughtful, engaging lessons that are led by children's interests. And you just
Mhm.
have to flip the way that you currently plan and the way that you see yourself as a teacher to be a
Mhm.
little bit different.
Yeah, and if you
So,
back off a bit, and instead of doing the drill and kill and what color is this? What shape is this? Well, whatever. Um, and if you're documenting and you're writing down things that the children are saying, things that you're noticing about them, maybe you're noticing, that they're having trouble with something, you can jot those things down. And that's going to be your living, like you said, the living document that you're following and that you're keeping track of. And that's what's guiding you as a
yep.
teacher. And I
And
also
I'll
want to
tell you,
say,
oh, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, I think that play-based, curriculum is so important because kids extend on that play. It's not just one and done. We've talked about this a lot lately. It's not just, "Oh, yep, you did it. Okay, put it in your cubby." They
Yep.
keep building on the play. They keep building on what they're working on, and that's so important because the one and done stuff doesn't help anyone. It doesn't build your creativity. It doesn't make you think about something when you go home. It doesn't extend it where you're thinking, "Oh, you know what? That would be good for my block structure I'm working on." It's that type of stuff. You're missing out on that. It's just one and done. No process, no thinking, nothing. It's the creativity's shot. Right. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely true. I don't know what I was going to say, but
Oh, sorry. I keep
no,
interrupting
no,
you.
no, don't. It's not you. It's my age. Guys, don't get old because you all of a sudden forget stuff that was like right there on the tip of your tongue and in the front of your brain. You forget things. Um, yeah, I think that we just need to rethink what planning is and who are we planning for and
Mm,
why are we planning for them when they can plan for themselves. And I just remembered what I was going to say that if you were I'll use myself when I was teaching and I would fill in my lesson plan every Thursday afternoon for the following week. I would get my lesson plan ready. And I'd sit with my co-teacher and we'd be sitting there. What are we going to do for science on Tuesday? And what are we going to do for this on Friday? And,
mhm,
I remember that. And I remember sometimes just saying, just write something in there so that it's in. And that's when you get into trouble, I think, because I think that's when you try to make your art fit a theme or a scheme. And art should be art for art's sake, and outdoor
mhm,
playtime doesn't always have, it can be, you can do some planning for outdoor playtime, but it doesn't need to be a prescribed, this is what the teacher thinks you should do or what they'll bring outside. So I would use the document a little differently. And I would really think about what you need and think about individual children and think about things. But remember, you don't have to have something different every day. I don't
mhm,
know about you, but if I was 4 years old, I'd want to hear Pete the Cat's groovy shoes more
mhm.
than once. I'd want to hear that a few times that week. I
Yeah.
might want to paint with the same things a few different times in different ways, or maybe use different materials. So when we do that pre planning, we're often changing it up all the time, like thinking, oh, we need to have, 45 activity ideas or whatever it is, when maybe you
Mhm.
only need to have a few different things and then see where it leads, see where it goes. And lots of repetition because that's how the kids learn. And that's how, as we all know, but that's how their brain develops and the hardwiring in their brain and those synapses firing happen through repetition and repeated use of things. So don't be afraid of that. And if your supervisor says, well, your lesson plan has something on it, 3 different times, you say, yep, and this is why, justify it and back
Mhm.
yourself up and don't be afraid to know your children well and to share what you know about them with people outside of
Absolutely.
your realm.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
And again, when you think about the play-based curriculum, it's geared towards kids. It is, looking at them and what their interests are. It's also being a great facilitator, meaning putting out good materials, meaning loose parts and things that children are going to be interested in and just going with it. And again, we talked about this the other day at one of our trainings. Maybe Monday you put out shaving cream and they're playing with the shaving cream and they're having a blast with it. And then maybe Tuesday you put out, combs. And maybe Wednesday, you notice they're doing the combs and they did the combs and they love the combs. You're going to put the combs out again on Wednesday. And maybe Thursday when it's out, you're noticing they're not really interested in it. So you're going to give them some pool noodle pieces and they're going to build with pool noodle pieces with the shaving cream. So that one idea of using shaving cream just keeps getting extended, extended, extended. And like you said, more synapses are being, connected and formed because they had this experience with shaving cream that was so involved rather than just,
And
oh, we did
I
shaving
can
cream on
tell you
Monday.
right now, somebody's listening right now saying, "We can't use shaving cream, my licensor said we can't, or my director said it's toxic," or whatever it is, and we're
Mhm.
just gonna come and tell you that the warning sign on shaving cream is the same sort of toxic warning that's on toothpaste. So, you're not gonna let a child squeeze a tube of toothpaste down their throat, and you're not gonna let a child take the shaving cream like whipped cream and squirt it into their mouth. You're gonna, be there to make sure everything's okay. So please don't panic about shaving cream. It's a really wonderful resource, and
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
can get it at the dollar store, the
Mhm.
buck and a quarter store, um,
Absolutely.
and, but hopefully this helps a little bit,
Yep.
and remember, all the current really good solid research about what's best for kids focuses on play. It's not focused on testing and assessment and a thematic curriculum or any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's focused on
Do
children's
not
ability to know what they need.
Yeah, don't waste your money on boxed curriculum, give the money towards a luncheon for your teachers, use the money towards, loose parts that you can collect and use
Are
and,
you kidding me?
good
Get
stuff.
yourself a bottle of wine, go to the spa, put your feet up, get a massage. That's what you use the money for.
There you go. All right. I think
Let
I
them play.
let them play. Let them play. Play is the curriculum for sure. I love it.
Love it.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.